Start us off, Carter.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. There isn't much I need. Don't need a bunch of presents underneath the Christmas tree. I just want you for my own, more than you can ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. Ooh. Ooh, ooh. Then we go into McCartney. It's Christmas time. Everyone's wearing sweaters, drinking some wine, having a good time. We are having a bunch of Christmas time. So that's all I got. Carter and Kevin explain football on Carter.
I'm supporting Thanksgiving and not partaking in Christmas songs until
No,
after
haven't.
Thanksgiving.
Didn't you get the memo? We all have to pretend that Christmas is now a 2 month odyssey that consumes
No.
all of our lives. That's how it
I
works.
refuse to acknowledge Christmas until the day after Thanksgiving. The first
Then you
Christmas
show.
song can be played after my second plate of food. Maybe I'm working on my third, maybe I'm working on dessert on Thanksgiving, and I feel like I'm about to poop my pants. That is when Christmas music can formally start. And
Then
it
you
is
should be
perfectly
destroyed.
acceptable until Halloween.
You have chosen death then. I'm trying to blow you up through the screen. I just, it's just so weird that, I don't know. And it's like, it'd be one thing if we had like good Christmas stuff anymore, but it's like, when was the last good, we've run poor Mariah Carey into the dirt. We haven't had a good Christmas movie since fucking Elf, well, that Kurt Russell one was kind of good, but mostly Elf. Um, which is unironically one of the best depictions of New York City basically since the 2000s. No, seriously, it's like you like in terms of like the history of like if I ever went back for my masters and did like a big like sort of film
Thesis.
criticism thesis, yeah, I would love to do one on like assuming I went into the film criticism school, like the film historian school, and not like the actual production school. I would love to do like a history of New York as depicted on film. And there was like this period in the late '90s and early 2000s where like everything got a little too sanitized, a little whitewashed. Like again, there's like two black people in any of those movies. And Elf is great because it understands that New York City, especially in Christmas, is the most magical, incredible place on earth, and yet it's also filthy and grimy as hell. It like the streets are kind of dank, everyone's a little crabby, the snow only looks good for like a day. Um, and yet it's the most magical thing that like it's the most magical any city ever gets at any time of year. And also, it depicts the New York Police Department as a group of thugs who are going to beat the shit out of Santa Claus,
Yeah. Side
which
note.
is historically accurate.
Side note about when you said about snow. The best time to view snow is like 2 a.m.
Yes, I agree. Nighttime, when it really is like, oh, there is no noise. It is
Yeah.
all of the noise has been sucked
It
out of the
gets
air.
extra still, and you can see perfectly in front of you despite it being pitch black.
Oh, yes, amen. Um, but yeah, Elf is unironically like again. I know we're pushing it into the ground, but it's unironically great. I love how it depicts New York. Um, it like again we haven't had a like again I would kill for something as good as like Elf or Miracle on 34th Street or like just any like because this fucking red one that's coming out that's like oh Santa Claus is yoked but he's been kidnapped by like I don't know the fucking feds or so like the Chinese I don't know maybe Korea we'll figure it out when we get there no it's probably like a Bezos type or something they probably yeah they don't want to get political but they can do anti-corporate. Yeah, and like, oh, and Chris Evans is in this, be it trying to be Ryan Reynolds, and I'm like, fuck this. Why can't we have real Christmas movies anymore? I don't know why. This was actually a very good week of football. I don't know why I'm doing this shtick right now.
Yeah, I have no idea either.
I just like I drop my dad off at PT. I go to the Barnes and Nobles that's right across the street, and already the Christmas music is playing, and I'm like, ugh. I again, we haven't even. I haven't even finished carving the pumpkins yet. But Anyway, yeah, so week 8 is in the books. It's kind of hard to decipher what the midpoint of the year is now. Personally, as I've said before, I will be buried in that cold, cold earth before I acknowledge that we have 17 games. Um, but yeah, we kind of went into the week being like, there's not a lot of premier matchups. It's kind of just a bunch of teams playing each other. And then it quietly became one of the most exciting weeks of football we've had in quite a long time in terms of just like from 1 o'clock to 8 p.m., just good game after good game.
Oh yeah, I think that's kind of what the brilliance of this week was the fact because like there was no standard.
Mm.
It was you're gonna like it's like all right, we have games for you. You're gonna watch the games, and it's just
Yeah.
like all right, and it's for the vast majority of them. I think with the exception of maybe one, two, 2.5
Mm.
of them, they were all like they all had ability to be like don't sleep on games.
I agree.
And it
Yeah.
was like and it's just like oh like it's like all right my team doesn't play till 4 o'clock, let's just put on a game at the 1 o'clock time slot. Oh shit, like this is pretty good.
Mm.
Or it's like
Right.
like I'm riding this football high from my team winning at 1, let's see what else I can watch. Oh, what do we have here?
Yeah. Because outside the divisional matchups and like the two night games having sort of like marquee franchises playing each other's status, there aren't a lot of like historic
Yeah.
matchups here.
Uh,
You're
there-
never like, yes, the Lions and Titans, a classic battle, like a classic scum bum battle.
yeah, there was no.
It's like these. If you told me these teams have never played before, I would believe that.
Yeah. Like there was some like divisional stuff, but it was that none of them were like super scary and big beforehand.
Mhm.
Beforehand.
Yes.
And then it's like you have some like bigger name matchups. Like it's like oh you got Bills Seahawks. That could be that's some potential for like a good game to watch.
Wait, I'll loop around to that game. That was a weird fucking game.
Yeah, but it's like it for none of the teams being like your team. I feel like everyone had a good opportunity to watch some good football.
Mhm.
And that was nice.
I agree completely. Yeah, shall we dive in?
Yep.
Let's not do the obvious one first. Let's do the slightly more low key one. Lions stay dominant. They're basically just doing achievements, trophies, and challenges now. I will say, when this game first started, it had a very weird vibe of like, oh, are the Lions? Is this going to be like? Is this going to be the classic? We juice a team up too much, like we grease them up a little too much, and then they slip and fall.
Yeah.
Because it was 14-14 going into like mid through the way through the second quarter.
Yeah. It was 14-14. It began 14-14 right at the beginning of the second quarter, and then yeah.
Well, it really is. It's so. I actually kind of feel bad for the Titans because again, their defense is very good. Actually, they're not they don't get a lot of turnovers. Like they're not like the glamorous, but they really are like a lunch pail. We have like 3 or 4 blue collar guys and a good enough system around them to persevere. The problem is their quarterback play has been absolute diarrhea this year, and at some point, like. The floodgates just open when you can't score enough, and like you're averaging 2 turnovers a game on offense. Again, Brian Callahan, it's not so easy when you don't have Joe Burrow, who came into the league pretty good at like naturally dissecting defenses, and his weakness was just self-preservation. The Lions kind of just shoved them in a body bag and start like it really was like the Jason Voorhees stuff someone in a sleeping bag and just start thwacking them around on things till they die. I want to read off I know box score chasing is kind of futile, but I just want to read off some of the stupid numbers
Also,
were produced from this game.
It looks like they got mercy ruled the way the scoring is laid out.
Yes. Like, if there was ever going to be a time where they're just like, you're not allowed to score touchdowns. You can run into the end zone, but it won't count toward the final score. It'll effectively be a touchback. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries, 127 yards, 70-yard touchdown score. Khalif Raymond, Brock Wright, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta all got touchdowns.
Khalif Raymond got
Uh,
2.
oh, yes, I forgot because they also had a punt return touchdown.
Yep.
Their punt returner had 5 punts for 190 yards. I didn't think you were allowed to have that many return yards anymore. Their kicker only had to kick 1 field goal. And the final number of yards for Jared Goff, despite throwing 3 touchdowns, 85 yards. Again, that's what I mean where it's like, win a game, like, yeah, there's like there's a challenge they always do in multiverses where you have to knock out someone who has less damage than you. That's what this feels like. Can you win a game by more than 20 points where you only throw for 85 yards? It is simultaneously the confounding thing about the Lions, but also the most lovable. That it really is. Out of all the teams, they probably have the most ways to win right now.
Yeah.
Like, more than the Chiefs, more than the 49ers are kind of a mess right now.
Yeah,
but, like, more than any of the...
Apart.
Yeah. Yeah. More than any of the, like, sort of esteemed contenders, like, they probably have the most ways to win right now, only because there's a couple red flags with Baltimore that do need to be addressed. Again, just putting on a clinic, I think that's the fun part of this team right now. It feels like it's so weird to say the Detroit Lions are so assured of their place in the league and so assured of their ability to win that they can kind of, and I'm not dick around because you can't, I mean, yeah, you know what, fuck it. They can dick around because it's like, people, like, fantasy people are really disappointed with Sam Laporta, and it's like, yeah, well, they don't need him to have 10 catches a game now. They literally can just save him for, like, trick plays or when David Montgomery decides it's his turn to throw the football.
Which happened for a touchdown.
Yes. I'm pretty sure it happened last week, too. That's just... And again, that's like... some people argue, like, you shouldn't waste all your trick plays. But, like, when you're doing hooks and ladders to your best offensive lineman, and you somehow have multiple plays dedicated to your second-string running back, your power running back throwing the ball, that just makes the defensive coordinator on the other team have a freaking conniption the following week. Because it's like, all right, I guess we have to waste an hour of practice preparing for all these plays.
Yeah.
Because they probably, if they're willing to show this many, they probably have 5 more.
Yeah, the amount they do throws a proverbial monkey wrench into everyone else's plans because, like, kind of like you said, it's just like they're showing off a bunch of them, and you never play your full hand. So it's like you're sitting in the sideline, like in the back somewhere, going like, "We're gonna do the annexation of Puerto Rico." Which, my God, if they do that, I would freak out. I would cancel football.
Just the newscast. The Detroit Lions have somehow stolen the entire island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
It is now just in Detroit. They kind of just shoved it in the Great Lakes. It doesn't quite fit. Like, it's jutting its ass into Canada a little bit. We'll figure out the border situation there. Oh, God. No, I can't do a side tangent about lobstering in the Canadian waters.
Nope.
There's an area of dispute. There's going to be a war over lobsters someday. Mark my words, because there's an area of land they're all migrating to. Because we never solved that issue with Canada after the War of 1812 of who owned this specific blotch of meaningless water. But anyway, yeah, I think one of the great sort of like dodged tragedies was Ben Johnson deciding to stay. Because he would be I feel good about him being a good head coach, but like it is so fun to have this level of like everyone has been here so long, we can just fuck around for a year.
I think that was like the best career move for the team and for him. Because
yes,
he did show he could be like he had head coach capabilities. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one can dispute that. But like to like put it on such a display and then just be like, all right, it's like, you want some offers? And he just goes, I helped turn this team around. No, thank you. I want to see this through. And it's just like, yes, that is like one of the top levels of like, I'm looking out for this team and like you want to see ever.
And as much as I want to see him save a young quarterback on a different team, a part of me is just like, guy, Detroit owners, could you maybe just make him and Dan like head coaches and like give him a little more money? Like, I don't know. I think to keep this train rolling, Dan Campbell would probably be cool with that.
Yeah. But
Um,
also, I feel like there's the fear of wronging Dan Campbell during it. I'm gonna be
right.
real. If there is like out of all the head coaches, if there's one that like I had to fight all of them but one, like the meme of like choose one to like work with you and then the rest to
Yes.
go after you. I want Dan Campbell on my side. I feel
Right.
like he has like watching him on the sidelines, he has enough like silent rage and out loud rage that I would be like, I don't want to fight. I'll fight almost
I also
every single other head coach and
I also
previous
love for
ones.
his like meathead, like lughead sort of vibe.
Yeah,
It's like, all right, his team has like one of the most dynamic passing attacks we've ever seen, and also he drinks espresso, which is like fancy boy coffee, like for people who want like fancy boy coffees.
yeah,
Like, that's the opposite of like it's literally the opposite of American like take coffee habits because the whole Americano is literally called that because GIs overseas in France didn't like espresso, so they're like, well, if we put water in it, it's kind of like coffee.
yeah.
He's a man of culture, is what I'm saying. But yes, good on the Lions for being. Honestly, this is like for all the hand wringing about offense being dead. The Lions have been on one of the like longest one of the best 4-game heaters in terms of offense we've seen in quite a while. Moving on to kind of like the biggest, like if you saw one headline from the week, it is this one.
It is
Washington's
play of the game.
Yes, play of the year. It'll be when they do the top 10 plays, unless there's something really cool in the Super Bowl. This is probably what it's going to be. It is Washington's Hail Mary was answered. Commander Daniels saves the day, and I'm a fool. I took him out of my fantasy lineup because I was like, I don't know with the ribs, and Chicago's defense has been pretty good, and like Caleb could cook against this defense. For someone who like references biblical quotes as much as I do, my lack of faith truly was disturbing. Not gonna lie, kind of fucked that one up. But yes, this went from like a shockingly boring game to the most iconic game of the year very, very quickly. Basically, both offenses were just totally stuck in the mud for like 90% of the game. The Commanders were still able to do their usual thing of like we barely have to punt. They just kept kicking field. I think they literally until the end of the game only kicked field goals. At the 11th hour, basically the last 2 drives of the game, Caleb Williams finally heats up, leads a 62-yard drive to take the lead. The Commanders have one shot.
One opportunity.
From their own 48, Daniels sails a pass 52 yards into the air. It ricochets off multiple Bears and ends up getting caught for the touchdown.
Did you see the guy that it ricocheted off last? The video
Yes.
of him beforehand?
Yes. So there's a lot to
There's a
lot to unpack with this one. First off, it is it's for the Commanders, this is more just like an affirmation of divine destiny. Like at some point when things like this happen in like such a weird off-kilter game where you just can't do anything right, or at least like you can't like sustain drives, you're not scoring touchdowns, to have that happen, to have such a cartoonish like have it deflect into the air into a man's hands, it just does feel like it's like, oh, this is like Team from Destiny stuff.
Yeah.
Like, these fans are being rewarded for about 2 decades of suffering. Like, the promised land is here. And it's very fun that Dan Snyder doesn't get to enjoy it. 2, it's just, for the Bears, it is... Where to even start? So... Alright. I'm trying to... Just give me a minute to think of appropriately where to start. But,
in the beginning, when God created the Bears.
Yes. Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback on cornerback, like who is like basically like they tell everyone to get back, cover the end zone. He's pointing and taunting fans kind of realizes at the 11th hour that the ball's actually going to get thrown, sprints into like the scrum, and happens to be the one that volleyballs it into the air for a touchdown. On one hand, I feel really, really bad for him because it's like, unless he does something really, really great with the rest of his career, this is going to follow him around forever. Like, this will be on every like article that's ever written about him. It'll be on his obituary, and I'm like, God, that has to be a nightmare. On the other hand, I don't want to blame him because why do people play Hail Marys like this? I don't understand why you insist on not rushing anyone and just like getting into these scrums. Of course it's going to get deflected into the air. You have like 12 hands punching it. Incidentally, shout out to the Lions for showing us how to actually defend the Hail Mary. Last week against the Vikings, they blitzed an extra linebacker and ended up getting the sack.
Yeah.
And it really is for the Bears. It is kind of... Look, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. They haven't been that bad, but it really does feel like this was like a death nail for this specific regime. Especially because an article came out during this week that mentioned that this was the team Ben Johnson wanted to go to. He assumed that the job would end up getting opened up, so he was like pivoting all of his like moving all of his chips into getting the Bears job. Yeah. The Bears end up staying with Matt Eberflus, and the timing of that article really does feel like we're about to fire a lot of people sort of energy, because again it kind of reminds me of the Robert Saleh thing of like, at some point, if you've had the same coach for this long and you keep making excuses, regardless of whether it's quote-unquote right or wrong, you kind of just have to fire them. Because again, Robert Saleh led an incredible defense for a long time, and yet could never seem to keep the team chemistry together long enough to have one winning season. Matt Eberflus has performed above expectations for like 2 or 3 years now, and yet they always come up short of like, again, Justin Fields was never able to take that next step. The defense was never quite good enough to get you into the playoffs. And now you're kind of just wasting Caleb Williams' career. And what's hilarious is that I'd argue the Hail Mary isn't even the worst play from the Bears. The worst play from the Bears was they had a goal line situation. Instead of running a sneak, running the ball, throwing the ball, doing anything you normally do in a football game, they decide to hand the ball off to a backup lineman who is playing fullback, who proceeds to fumble it, and Washington recovers it. Mm-hmm. And it really is just... This is classic Bears. They get like a generational prospect. Yeah, you kind of deserve to lose that game. That's the thing. I've seen a lot of Bears fans who are like, I can't even be mad. We didn't deserve to win that game. That was just like... It's almost karmatic action that it ended in the most upsetting fashion possible. I really do think, depending on how this next game goes, I really do think it's like hot seat watch for both Eberflus and Ryan Poles, their GM. Because one, the Cardinals, again, they're a good barometer team. Like, good teams beat them, bad teams can't, again, like the Seahawks, they are a bar team that decides whether or not you're a serious team or not for the playoffs.
Agreed.
And if they lose that game, if they come out after that soul-shattering loss...
They are the leader of the NFC West.
We got a crowbar, at least a little NFC West talk into here at some point. That thing's getting silly. But yeah, if they lose that game, if they can't muster up the anger to come out and have a big game, then it's over. Again, it's you have to make that tough decision to be even though technically Poles and Eberflus have been quote unquote good, we can't settle for good anymore. Again, by the grace of God, you somehow managed to get the number 1 overall pick because Carolina's stupid and got the quarterback teams were actively tanking for. Yeah. You can't fuck this up. It's one thing to fuck up Justin Fields. He was the 3rd or 4th quarterback picked.
He was a couple.
Can't fuck this one up.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least you can make this excuse of 10 other teams had red flags on him.
Fucking up quarterbacks 1 and 2 are that's kind of a real bad sign. But if you fuck up a quarterback drafted 4th or lower,
right?
Even into
you can be look, we didn't.
Right.
Exactly. You can be look, he wasn't. We didn't get the pick of the litter. We got the best guy available, and we tried. It's like when the Bills drafted EJ Manuel. Of look, it's not the best pool, but we're doing the best we can. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Moving on, a solid week of football, as we mentioned. Scott Hansen almost died. I just want to specifically reference this little sequence that happened during, right around the witching hours, they call it, like that, like 3:30, 4 o'clock spot
wins
where the games
become
are wrapping up.
losses and
Losses and losses become wins. So it was a combination of, and this is just an easy way to cover a lot of different games, but the Green Bay Jacksonville game, Jordan Love ends up pulling his groin again. Like, he ends up getting hurt again. I'm actually going to take that off the low lights because we're going to cover it here. I'm starting to worry that this is just going to be the year from hell from him, where he just always has some kind of stupid injury.
Yeah.
Malik Willis comes in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
go ahead.
God they have Malik Willis. I was going to say, Jordan Love is kind of slowly is falling apart this season. And I feel like...
Yeah, just... It happens. Some years you just get really beat up. And I never thought I would hear someone say, thank God for Malik Willis.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy, because he seems like a very kind, gentle soul. But anyway, so the Packers are down. And as this is happening, we also have the New England Patriots trying to drive on the Jets to take the lead. And while that's happening, we also have the Browns trying to drive on the Baltimore Ravens to take the lead. And basically, these three things happen. Oh, and also the Colts and Houston game is tied.
Yeah. It's
All of these things, yeah.
it's a whole... It's like they're going through a slideshow at the...
Yes. It really is. He has to bounce from game to game to game. And I know, I forgot. Arizona's about to kick a game-winning field goal. So while all of this is happening, basically, the Patriots punch it in. The Green Bay Packers run one of the most beautiful plays we'll see all year. It won't be on like the best plays of the year list, but in terms of design, it's beautiful. They have everyone go deep, have a tight end waiting in blocking position, who then slides underneath the line to do a huge, basically like slide route, and Malik Willis hits him in stride to get them into field goal range to kick the game-winning field goal. Beautifully
Baller.
executed. Yes, absolute baller move. And apparently they did not practice this. This is just like an old play they've had over the years that goes in and out of the playbook. And they didn't work on it the last couple weeks. So they literally, like, during like a commercial break, literally like, all right, we have this play. Here's what it looks like. As they describe it, they literally drew it in the sand. Because they're like, look, at least 2 or 3 of you know this play. It's really simple. And again, it's exactly what you want to do with a developmental quarterback who hasn't really gotten a lot of reps. Where it's like, we are literally going to design... There's going to be one person you throw it to. We are going to design this perfectly. So if he gets open, he will be clear and wide open. If it's not there, you either run, and if you don't have a lane, just throw it as hard as you can out of bounds. Keep it elementally simple.
Yeah, no.
Beautiful.
It is like... I feel like outside of like the drew it up on the sand, it is that perfect level of just simple brilliance. You don't need the fancy stuff. You don't need anything crazy. You're not spinning in a circle. You're just going for a simple, like, fake, basically.
Right. It's deceptively simple. Like, we were just talking about how kooky the lines have been with some of their trick plays. This is like, if that's chaotic good, this is lawful good. Of, like, this is just textbook execution of, like, a gotta-get-him play.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cardinals kick the game-winning field goal. The insane Baltimore Ravens-Cleveland's result, where Jameis Winston is actively trying to lose the game. He throws a ball right to Kyle Hamilton, who bumbles it. Truly, this is a devastating week for me as the biggest Kyle Hamilton fan. Like, my sweet prince. He really fucked that one up.
That was just brutal to watch.
Terror bobbled it. To quote one of the most important Americans of all time, Freddie Fazbear. Terrible job, super shit. You really fucked that one up. Winston throws a 50-yard fucking bomb, and they end up winning the game. Let's not overreact to that, everyone. That's just a weird result. Like, the AFC North is going to have some weird results. Outside of some concerns, yeah.
I don't think it's one of those ones where it's just like, start packing the bags, start jumping the ship. It's like, no. It's kind of like how when... like how the Eagles-Browns game was so close, where it's just like Miles, it's like there is this one really niche scenario that doesn't always happen. So it's like they kind of made it just work. And then unfortunately for the Ravens, the Browns made it work a little too well.
Right. And I'd be remiss if I didn't loop back to the Jets game where it wasn't even Drake May. It was Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
Because Drake May got a concussion.
Yep.
Which really just adds to the... Look, I don't want to talk about the Jets long, but I will give Booger McFarland credit. Who, for me, he's always been a weird person on ESPN because he's not quite the bombastic personality you get. Like, he's not the Pat McAfee guy where it's very obvious they keep him around because he's loud and does crazy shit. But he's also not like the Mina Kimes, Benjamin Solak, like cartoonishly analytical, where you're like, oh, this person has like a supercomputer in their brain for this stuff. He's kind of a tweener. And I just loved his line of like, it's the coach's fault. It's this fault. We need to trade for this. We need to trade for that. Maybe it's just that you're not a very good team who put all of your chips into a quarterback who's not it anymore, and it's more of a distraction than a help. And I'm like, yeah, I am glad that a lot of ESPN people are coming out of the woodwork to finally crap on the Jets. Like, they're not... The trying to make fetch happen with this team is over.
Yeah, no.
And now we can just be mean.
I think what ended it was the losses following getting rid of Salah.
Right.
It's like, all right, maybe it's the coach, and then we can kind of work that angle, but it's just like back-to-back L's from that. It's just like, ooh.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is, like we said, this week was a great lesson in not judging a book by their cover, and like any matchup can be great. That's what's fun about football. And when you get like all of these like sort of random teams who don't see each other very often in the same room, and in the case of Baltimore-Cleveland, two teams that are psychologically incapable of having a normal game against each other, sparks can fly.
Yeah. Also, side note, before we go too far from Scott Hanson, I saw this thing about how he came up with the term Octobox, and it's a great interview bit where it's like, it's one of those moments where it's like, the person creating it seems silly, but they put so much thought into it, where he talks about, it's like, you open up, he's talking like in his like opening, he's like, you used to open up with the blimp shots. Everybody loves the blimp shots. That's like in people's memory. And
it justifies the existence of blimps for over 100 years.
Yeah. And then you go for like the picture-in-picture, the dual box, and he's like, it's like, how do we do like something of both calibers? And that's how the Octobox is born, and it's awesome. It's like,
again,
it's using it's one of those things where it's like, you know how it's like, oh, I'm never gonna use math in like outside of school and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I'm gonna just use psychology outside of school. And that's what happens.
But yeah, it really is like, it's interesting. I've seen a lot of pushback to Red Zone this year. Just people being like, I just like watching a single game. It's a little too much for me. If you ever need an affirmation about Scott Hanson's individual talent as like both an entertainer and as like a commentator of the sport, this weekend absolutely was that. Because to be able to like process multiple games going on in critical moments and like perfectly articulate what's happening and why it's exciting, and also sell it. Like we talk about like the iconic sort of like sports quotes from commentators. He is delivering on that front as well. Absolutely ace job this week. Arguably one of your best works. Yes. Moving on, this is a little note I want to make, because I really am trying to push to at least have one positive or negative centered around a non-quarterback position. The second wave of rookie receivers are arriving. So there's always talk about, like, the rookie wall. The idea of, like, they start good, and then they run out of steam because they play less games. Which isn't even really true anymore, just because of how, like, big the college football playoffs gotten, and, like, transfer portals adding more games. But, like, the one position I don't think that applies is wide receiver, just due to the nature of, like, well, you're just fundamentally getting hit less. And, like, learning the pace you need to play and learning, like, how to develop your route tree and, like, rhythm and timing, that naturally takes time. And the thing is, we kind of knew the big three rookie wide receivers were all going to do pretty well. Marvin Harrison Jr., they finally kind of figured out, like, someone explained it well as like the problem with him early in the year is they were trying way too many like high concept route trees. They were trying to do way too much like route option stuff. They were doing way too many like triple move routes. And it's like, why not just get the big fast guy on like simple fades and slants and like, just give him layups. Neighbors has obviously been basically holding the New York Giants offense together even when he's like out with concussion. And Rome Odunze, like, he is the best example of like tape over box score because like, yes, his numbers aren't great, but when you watch the game, every time he's on the field, he makes a huge play to the point I'm like, he just has to get more snaps than Keenan Allen. Mm-hmm. But it's the back half of the wide receivers that I've been really impressed with lately. Now, Brian Thomas Jr. was kind of a tweener. I think it's safe to say he probably belonged in that like elite group. It really was the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase thing again with him and Malik Neighbors, where it's like, oh, the superstar is distracting from the fact that the other guy's also a superstar. But Brian Thomas Jr. is in the top 10 for touchdowns and yards. He's again, if it wasn't for him, the Jaguars' offense would be genuinely non-functioning. We got, Xavier Worthy hasn't really done much. He's had his splash plays. I definitely think you're seeing, like, he needs a little more time. But Ricky Parasol is finally playing, and it's exciting to see that he is going to have a lot of opportunities with the way the 49ers season is rolling out. Xavier Legette not only has been a very fun present, like, the genuine one positive vibe on the entire Carolina Panthers team.
It really is.
And, yeah. And despite not having a high volume of touches, he is scoring consistently. He's had 3 touchdowns in the last 5 games. And you watch him, and he really does pass the eye test of, like, in terms of, like, proof of concept of, like, hey, do you kind of want an A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel type? Big guy, runs, long strides, can, like, bully
runs
through
hard
people.
As opposed to fast, if that makes sense.
Yes. Exact perfect way of putting it. Yeah, like, again, it's what happened with the Titans when they drafted Treylon Burks and traded A.J. Brown, where it's like,
that happened.
Yeah, that was wishful thinking that you could find another A.J. Brown. But fortunately for the Panthers, it worked out where it's like, oh, no, we did find an A.J. Brown. Okay. Yeah. And I think, like, with more time and ideally a much better offense around him, they will be able to scheme him up a lot of really good stuff.
If they plan to keep him for a while, they have to plan to keep him for a while.
Yeah. Unless you are truly going for a top-down, we are burning this thing down to dust, he has to be at least... Hell, even then, it's like he's one of like the 3 things you keep. Then the offensive line, because you already spent the money on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Again, the offensive line isn't bad. The problem is that your quarterbacks aren't very good. Yeah. Keon Coleman, who kind of inspired this topic, all of his analytic numbers have looked quietly good over the last 3 weeks, but it really is insane of like, oh, again, we get one adult in the room who handles all the big boy stuff, and every other receiver just looks 100 times better. Not only, like, Shakir looks better, Kincaid looks better, but in particular, they've really found Keon Coleman's niche of like, no, we got this guy because we really want a jump ball guy, a big guy who can go get the ball. We are just going to lean into that fully. There are like basically 2 route concepts he runs. Run in a straight line, I'm going to throw the ball before you've even turned around and you're just going to bully the cornerback. Or you're going to catch it on like a slant and you're going to take advantage of the fact that you have really long legs. And not only did he look great, he scored a great touchdown against the Seattle cornerback group, which is one of the better ones in the league. Yeah. But also, like, his attitude was cool. Like, again, people were like, is he too nice to be a top-tier wide receiver? Don't you have to be a little crazy? And it's like, oh no, he's crazy. He's like, he shoved a guy into like the bleachers, or not the bleachers, but like the seats on the sideline and gets a penalty, and then immediately gets like a 30-yard huge game-changing pass play. He blocks someone into the dirt and just starts pointing at him. Like, again, if part of the goal of the Bills was to get bigger and tougher over the last 2 years after getting bullied by the Bengals, he's the proof concept of that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say Len McConkey is quietly having a very good stretch of games.
And a great
yes, again, either the best or worst name for a wide receiver, because you're like, Lad McConkey. That's a tight end if I've ever heard one.
Or if you
no.
Lad McConkey.
Yeah. He should be, yeah, he should be fighting off the Brit. He should be fighting off those damn Brits to liberate Scotland.
He really
But
should be.
anyway, yeah, today he had an absolutely ace game against the Saints. 6 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And like,
The
I
lad.
gave Greg the lad. Um, I gave Greg Roman a lot of crap for how he ran the offense of the Ravens. Again, like you have one of the fastest, most dynamic quarterbacks to ever be in open space. Why are you bunching everything up and using him like a battering ram? The thing is, it works a lot better for the Chargers because, like, Justin Herbert is like the prototypical like if your platonic ideal of a quarterback is like Dan Marino and or Joe Montana, like 3D print me one of those, like perfect arm, perfect in rhythm, great structure, gets the job done. And like Lad McConkey is the perfect wide receiver for that because he is, he already has a pretty developed route tree. He is able to play basically like like he can be that pseudo tight end. He can be the X receiver. He can be the slot receiver. He's just he's showing why like a lot of people really were like bullish on him and actually pushing for him to be a first round player. But like as someone who really like of all the individual positions, I mean, I guess I gas up running back a lot, but I really love wide receivers because there's just it's the most diverse position in terms of you just get a little bit of everything. I'm really happy to see this like a lot of prospects with a lot of upside within a few question marks. The upside is winning out for a lot of them thus far.
Yeah, no, I can agree to that.
Shall we dive into the do not sleep on
Yeah,
games?
we'll start with you, and I think this is, if I recall correctly, this is back-to-back game weeks where you choose the game I picked, and I don't choose that game.
Right? We're locked in, baby. Um, Tampa Bay versus Atlanta. Um, I was torn on what I wanted to pick, and ultimately what I go for with my don't sleep on games is like a narrative sort of thing.
Yes.
And the narrative here is there are two narratives here. One, hallelujah, the Kyle Pitts
Kyle Pitts
revelation is
can
here.
Kyle Pitts can
Yeah, he
actually
can
play.
play football. Yes. Like again, they figured out like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna run in a straight line and take advantage of the fact that you're like 6'5" and run a 4.3, and at some point that's just gonna win by default. He had basically all of his yards came on 2 huge touchdown runs, where he just kind of bulldozed over people. Finally, because again, maybe we were a little too bullish on Kyle Pitts, but I just refuse to believe that a man of his size and physical traits,
No,
you can't just find something for him to do by accident.
I think what last year proved and how he's been doing this year, it's they needed a competent quarterback. They got that with Kirk, and Art Smith never really planned for Kyle Pitts. I think that was pretty clear.
Right.
It looks like they never planned to include Kyle Pitts into like a reception based role. And now head coach change, quarterback change to like a more of a gun like Kirk is a
Yeah.
gunslinger. Can't deny that. He loves throwing the ball. Um, so it's like, all right, there. This is a nice. I feel like not a nice transition, but it's just like this is setting up Kyle Pitts more than it is setting
Yeah.
up like somebody else.
After
He's
a
sorry.
nightmarish Yeah. After a nightmarish game against the Saints where he only got 3 targets and didn't catch the ball once, and it really was like the fantasy people were like, all right, we're burying Kyle Pitt. Grab your shovels, kids. It's the annual burying of Kyle Pitts. He has arguably had the 4 best games of his career back to back to back to back. And for me, this is also a don't sleep on game because quietly, I think the NFC South has been decided. Barring an unprecedented collapse, it really just feels like now the Falcons are completely in the driver's seat. They've already played Tampa twice and beaten them both times.
Yes.
They've looked incredibly competent. Again,
Yes.
they
Agreed.
again in terms of like the good bad team nexus, they are definitely on. I feel like they're pushing themselves into the good side of that more, or at least the competent side
Yes.
where they're not, they're going to get the wins they need.
I think if they continue at this pace, we'll say that.
Mm,
Um, if they continue at this pace, I feel like it's going to be a different tone than last year with this division, where we're sitting there week 18 going, God, it's the Buccaneers going into the playoffs this year.
Which is hilarious because they won a playoff game.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. Um, but it's just like we were kind of like it's like you could really throw anyone in there and it's gonna be the same odds as with the exception of the Panthers. But now after a horrific week 3 loss apparently to the Eagles, the Saints have just completely fallen off. They had two.
Yeah, it's another
wins.
team we haven't talked about nearly enough. Where it's like, what the fuck happened?
They fell off, and now they're falling apart. In addition to the fall off, that is like,
Right.
what happened here?
Yeah, well, the answer is the entire offensive line got hurt, and it forced Derek Carr to fall back into all of his old habits of not wanting to get hurt, and their defense got hurt, and it's like the team that was supposed to be the Saints isn't the Saints. But it really is funny of like, we haven't talked about them, and someone's like, man, the Saints have been really bad lately. It's the Plankton meme of like, what? It's just an ordinary football. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's like, all right, they're because it's like, all right, what are they? The lower half of 500? Like, it's like, all right, what are we gonna do? Oh no,
2-6.
Yeah.
How did this happen? Oh my god!
If they were 3-5, no one would bat an eye.
I'd be like, right? It's like, all right, they're not as good as those first 2 games suggested, but like, holy hell!
Yeah, but I think this division is going to be purely based off of strength of schedule for the finals of the
Yeah,
final round.
yeah. And I will give the Buccaneers credit for gutting it out and still making this a competitive game despite not having basically the entire core of your offense. But again, much like the 49ers, when you don't have the core of your offense, it's just,
It's kind of a dumpster.
Kind of is what it is.
But I think that's why it makes it towards the end, because I know they're benching Mike Evans till after their bye week, which is week 11, I believe. Which is like great for me on fantasy because I have him. And I don't. Oh God, what is Chris Godwin? I don't know the status of him.
He's done. Yeah, he's done. There's no way he's coming back. Yeah.
All right, but it's like
at least Evans will come back at some point.
Yeah. Probably after their bye week, if everything is to be believed. So it's like they kind of have the ability to work things out. Otten is a pretty solid tight end. Their running back room isn't terrible, but it's not the best. So it's like they have the ability, like they can put up a competitive attempt for the division, but I don't believe they can win.
Yeah, it does feel like that it's at least been answered. But your don't sleep on game, Arizona at Miami.
Yep.
A kind of low-key interesting game from this week.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's just like Cardinals have this historic record of being the worst bad team or the best worst team.
Yes.
And then the Dolphins have been all over the place. Like incredibly dominant, 70 points, blown out. Like the amount of brain injuries that Tua has, who knows?
Right. It's the wannabe dream team of like, wouldn't it be cool if the Miami Dolphins were good again? Yeah. Typically, in this like high-flying offense version, at a period where offense has kind of taken a step back.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also like it was a fun game, like it was competitive the entire time. There was no clear like, ooh, this person, like if they don't make a comeback, it's gonna be bad. It's always like been like one in a field goal score game. Highlights include the Cardinals got a safety. They scored a long distance field goal, a shorter distance field goal. They got a running touchdown, a passing touchdown, a safety. Give them a punt return touchdown and pick 6, and they would have hit the whole kit and caboodle.
Right, that's why I can't quit the Cardinals. Even with this wonky NFC North, or NFC West, where everyone's kind of in it, like simultaneously the Cardinals and Rams were threatening to trade high-profile players like Budda Baker and Cooper Kupp, But now they can't because it's like, well, we could win the division.
Yeah,
And,
they are technically the leaders of the division.
which, well, okay, it really is like if a 9-8 team from this, if a 9-8 team ends up winning this division, it will be like it'll be that flirting versus harassment meme where it's like you're sweet, oh you, haha. Then someone from the NFC South who's 9-8's like you're sweet, hello human resources.
Yeah, no, this is a highly competitive like division right now. Like the NFC South, it's just like, ooh, this is kind of like last year. It was just kind of like, oh man, like they needed somebody to win to be in. That's what happened there. But this year, it's like, ooh, like the NFC West. It's like, ooh, they're 3-4-4 teams right now, and 1-3-4 team. Awesome. They are going to be fighting to the death. Yeah, and it's also one of those seasons where it's like they don't have super easy schedules either. Like their own division's competitive, so that's 6 games right there. And then I believe they are all facing the AFC East.
Yes, the AFC East plays the West.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, that's not a easy division. And then I think they also have the NFC North too. Yeah, they have the NFC North, which is another crazy competitive division. So it's like these guys are fighting for every single game. Awesome. So I think it's really going to come down to like this division is going to come down to week probably 17 or 18.
Oh yeah. Whereas there, whereas the AFC East inexplicably has become, and this is like the two sides of the coin. Because with this loss, the Dolphins just really feel, because again, this was the best case scenario.
Yes.
Tua was back, he looked competent, he slid. Devon Achane looked great again.
Yep.
Again, I don't understand how they can't get him yards when Tua's not in.
Doesn't
it just
make sense.
Truly doesn't make
It
sense.
really doesn't
Like,
make sense.
it is so damning of Mike McDaniel. They finally got Tyreek Hill going. Jalen Waddle is my fucking Judas because why aren't you better? And I'm like, God, honestly, I sincerely
opportunities to be better.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's what it is. I'm like, why the fuck would you bring Tyreek Hill in when you already had a fast guy? It annoys me so much because it really is
Hill.
like
That's
because it's like I know, but it's like if you swapped Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, both would probably. And I mean, I get Devontae Smith still gets his points and yards, and like still looks great on the team. He can still get 1,000 yards on the Eagles, but if he was like a palate cleanser to Tyreek Hill in terms of possession receiver, while Jalen Waddle just gets to be the guy on the Eagles. And like the turn of history where that draft goes differently. Both players stats look so much better and we're so less angry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, whereas the NFC West, this game basically affirms it's going to be a dogfight till the end. For the Dolphins,
Yep.
this kind of the AFC East inexplicably could be over before Thanksgiving. Like the
Crazy.
Bills already have 6 wins.
Yes.
If the Dolphins lose to the Bills this week, they might just be out. That's just over. 6-2.
Before week 9. Because we're on week 9. Jets were 2-6. Dolphins and Patriots, or Dolphins were 2-5. Patriots 2-6. Bills 6-2. The Buffalo Bills have as many wins as the rest of the division combined.
And they still get to play the Patriots twice.
And they still have to play the Patriots. They haven't played the Patriots yet?
Not yet.
At all?
No.
Oh, God.
No. And like in terms of division games, they have 1 against the Dolphins, 1 against the Jets, 2 against the Patriots. They're probably going to lose 1 because we never go undefeated against the division. Something stupid always happens. But like,
But honestly,
yeah, if you just get,
though,
yeah, it really is. Like, and again, I don't want to jinx the Bills, but the jinx always comes in the actual playoffs when something horrible goes wrong. But it's like they really only need to win 3 games to lock up this division, and it's like they can't get 3 wins for the rest of the season. Like their schedule's a little harder going forward, granted, but they still have to play Kansas City and the Rams, and Detroit.
49ers, Detroit. But that's like outside of that, it's their division, like you said, and then
Yeah.
Colts, and then their bye week.
Yeah, you're telling me between the Colts, the Dolphins, the Patriots twice, and the Jets, they can't win 3 of those? They can't go 500 on those?
I think it's almost impossible for them to not go 500 in that. At least with how
Right.
they've been playing and how they've been doing, unless if something catastrophic happens, they're gonna need like if they don't go 500 in that, fire everyone.
Right. Then it actually is like that because especially because with like especially because of all the consternation with the Sabres, even though they have been playing a little better lately. Like then you have to make the decision. It's like I don't care if you're opening a new stadium next year and you don't want overhaul. You have to get serious. Where it's like the window is now.
And
But
that 4 week span of Chiefs, 49ers, Bills, or no, they are the Bills, and Rams and Lions. It's like if they go 500 in that, great for them. If they don't, they don't. No one's gonna be upset. Because honestly, Chiefs might be reffing their way to win. 49ers are a hot mess, but they still have the potential to be good. Rams are another team in that super competitive division, and the Lions are scary. I feel like there's no other description.
Right. Yeah. That game for me, it's like, yeah, they can win the division, they can make the playoffs. That's a game where I'm like, you got to show up. I'm not going to believe this is actually a contender until you beat them. Like losing to the Ravens and the Texans, so that Texans game is even more confounding now. Like you have to beat. Bless you.
Thank you.
Between the Chiefs and the Lions, you got to at least go 1-1.
Yeah.
You have to show you can at least beat the big boys.
Yeah.
And I know the Chiefs haven't been that impressive, but their defense has been. You got to score on that defense. Is what I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I don't think the Bills need wins against them. I think they need to not lose against them. Like how I've been saying, like this, it's not a matter of this team losing; it's a matter of this team winning with some games.
Yes.
I think that's
one of your go-to adages.
Yep. I think that's what they need against the Lions and Kansas City is they need to not lose. If they don't lose, they're going to be hot.
Yes. Shall we move on to the lows? We actually don't have a lot of lows this week. Nope, it was a pretty good week, and honestly, most of the lows.
Yeah. That's why I was like, let's go on a little bit of tangents here. Let's not try.
Most of the lowlights are like, what more can we say about the Jets? What more can we say about the Cowboys? It's the same problems. Like they're on repeat. Again, if I'm the Cowboys, all I have to say about the Cowboys is they need to pull every single resource that they have into getting Ashton Jeffrey. I can never say it right. So they can have an actual running game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool Boise State guy.
Super, super cold start post-bye.
Yeah, that's the only notable part where they usually play better out of the bye. That's it might be over red flag.
Yeah, that red flag is flying high with them with that one. And
yes,
their strength of schedule is not soft. Minus
but anywho, yes. So your low light of the week, you kind of picked one of the big ones that because it happened on Thursday Night Football, people didn't talk about as much.
Yes. I feel like people talked about it a lot, like Thursday night.
But it was over, yeah.
But it was over.
But no talk on Monday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
The ending to the Thursday night football, Vikings versus the Rams, right? And it was a brutal face mask.
Yes.
In the end zone, right in front of the referee. And the dude just stood there. And it's like, how did you not call a flag on that? You're in front of at least one on camera, 2 in real life, referees. And, you can move your body in certain ways and stuff. But the way the guy moved, it was clearly his head being pulled, with this face mask. He was, his body was following his face. And they just went, oh, that's a legitimate play. And
yes, for a little bit of...
It was a hot game before that. It was like,
yes,
this is football. This is good watching. And to do that shit in the fourth, because it was the fourth quarter too, and it was like a one-score
Yes.
game at the time. It
Yes.
just immediately turned the game cold.
Yeah.
Like
And
they got the
yeah.
safety
So
for it. It was within the
mm,
2 minute warning, and they got the safety for it. The Rams got the safety, but it's just like it. It was like this is exciting. Vikings have a chance. They really need to go hard right now, and then they need to like pull some like they need to succeed in the having to declare the onside kick, which I'm upset by as a concept. Um, but it's like I do not think that the Vikings were still gonna win, even if that
yeah.
if that not penalty never happened. But it really bummed out the ending, kind of like the Eagles' loss in the Super Bowl, where it's just like it was a bullshit holding call. Well, it wasn't a bullshit holding call. It was it was a very clear cut holding call, and it was bullshit that it happened that at that point. And it's like this just turned the fires off.
Mm. Yeah, it's yeah. So the score was 28-20. The Vikings were at the 5. Thing was, the odds of them winning were very, very low. The best they could do on that drive is tie up the game,
Yeah.
which I feel like at least tempered some of the outrage about this.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
wasn't
it's a
for
shame.
the win.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, again, it was a fun game. Again, the Vikings offense continues to look good. Justin Jefferson, I'm just like, is he just the best player?
Yeah, he's
For the
pretty
Rams,
damn
they
good.
finally get Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back. I
They
didn't
both look
even
great.
think Puka was going to play. Yeah, they both look great. There was talk that Puka wasn't even ready, and he got like 9 targets. Again, all of my talk about the Rams was in this game because it's like this is why I like this team because when they have Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua all relatively healthy, they were one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. But yes, the face mask was so egregious that rookie Jared Verse was holding his head because he's like, God damn it, I just cost us a huge opportunity to end this game.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's like I think a lot of people get mad at the refs. A lot of people call, it's rigged, it's this, it's that. And it really is just, no, we have a bunch of like 50-year-olds trying to chase and follow the action of a bunch of 20-year-olds. While thousands upon thousands of people are screaming their heads off, and the lights are very bright, and you have to stay like laser focused like a goddamn hawk for about 2 hours of like real time. And it's just a hard job.
Hmm.
And it only looks worse because that was in particular egregious. It really is just amazing we have the system where like New York can look over a play and like make a
Exactly.
ruling. That just has to be
Ah,
standard for every game. I don't
yes.
care like surely you have enough people in the institution of the National Football League that you can dedicate
And
one. You don't need multiple, just one for every game.
yeah, and it's like they needed to. It was in the 2 minute warning, so they couldn't like challenge it because it was like automatically reviewed or whatever bullshit they decided. And they somehow reviewed it, and was like, "Yeah, it's fine."
Mm,
He didn't mean to.
right. Yeah, it is just a bummer because again, it's like
It's it's the worst feeling because it cools the Jets on the game. I feel like that's
yeah.
one of the worst things in football is a stupid call, whether it's the player's fault on it being a stupid call that it just decided to make a stupid penalty, or the refs just completely blow a call.
Mm,
It just takes the ice bucket and dumps it on the game. Because it's like, you go from like, yes, there's a chance, to like, it's like, we got this, we can fight back, there's a chance. And then people at home are like, fuck yeah, let's go, football. And then it's just like, oh god. I guess I'll take my dog out now. I guess I'll
mm.
start heading to the
Again,
car, beat that traffic.
yeah, it continues to just be an affirmation of like there needs to be a lot of reforming to how refereeing is done and like what the qualifications for a ref are. but the NFL refs union is famously ornery and will fight any change whatsoever. Remember, kids, unions are not inherently good nor bad, but rather they are tools whose morality is dictated by those who use them.
What's that from?
I made it up.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, it's OG Carterism.
Nope, I call bullshit. I know that's from something.
Swear to God, it's original thought in my head. Because I was annoyed at the video game Night in the Woods basically being like, yeah, this town ritualistically sacrifices kids, but if they have a union, things will be better. And it's like, no, they fucking won't. What are you talking about? It's my angst about class reductionism. But anyway, my lowlights. Indianapolis versus Houston was a goddamn nightmare. It is actually insane the vibes shift from the first game where we're like, this is the future of football. Look at these gunslingers chucking it downfield. Look at all these amazing plays. And this time it's just like...
So many union things suggested to me now because I'm looking this up. I fully believe that is something.
What? What? I'm a writer! You don't think I can come up with this shit?
I've heard it before.
I've said it before. I'm pretty sure I said it on this show before.
Okay, then maybe that's how I've heard it before.
Yeah, sometimes when my brain works right, I can be creative. When I'm not stressed all the time, I think of cool stuff to say. Anywho, the fucking Texans played the goddamn Colts and it was 23-20, and it was just kind of a nightmare on both ends. So, for the Texans...
It's a Simpsons quote, you fucking liar.
What? No, it isn't.
Nah, I just decided to pull that out of nowhere and see what happens.
Oh, you bastard. Don't invoke The Simpsons. I was there when it was written. That's an actual quote.
That is a quote, yeah.
But anyway, so yes, this was just a tough game because it just it really affirms the ceiling being lower for both of these teams than we were hoping. Yeah. Yes, the Texans are still, well, they're 6-3 now because we keep doing these after Thursday Night Football.
Yep.
But if pretend we have a time machine, they're 6-2 right now. I'm not worried about Stroud's individual play. He looks fine. He still can throw it. Yeah, this is a sophomore slump of the minor degree. The problem is the offensive line. So much of like the hype around the Texans was, well, the offensive line has to be better, right? Like they were very bad last year. Yes. They will get healthy, and that will inherently fix things. Well, they're not that much healthier, and they're not that much better. And the result is there are just so many plays where he's just forced to break the pocket and go into full creation superhero mode.
Yeah.
And it just completely gums up any vision the offense has. And it's starting to become a problem because it's not just that he's being forced into creation mode. It seems like he's not trusting his line to protect him. There are several times where he's bailing out of cleaner pockets because he's like, oh, I don't trust, I know he's going to blow that block, so I got to get moving. And on top of that, the vision of like, well, the weapons will make up for it. Collins is still not back, and unfortunately, Stephon Diggs. Look. At the end of the day, I kind of sided with Diggs on the whole breakup of the Bills because I fundamentally don't believe in our organization to do good. So I kind of sided with him trying to find a better team to play with. Even though I roll my eyes at the whole, it's a revenge game thing, and I'm like,
I hate that.
What revenge? Right? What revenge? You had a couple good years in Buffalo where you were an all-pro. You realized you felt like you'd reached your ceiling there, asked for a trade, and we traded you to a team who was a contender. We could have been dicks and traded you to the goddamn, we could have traded you to the Panthers, but no, we were cool about it. But anyway, yeah, he had a non-contact torn ACL, which sucks. And now the ceiling for the Texans just seems a lot lower. When Nico Collins comes back, it will be a little bit better, but it is just like... It's a pumping of the brakes on them being a Super Bowl contender, yeah. I think.
I don't think they've fully been ruled out of Super Bowl contention with this, especially with how they did beforehand. However, it's another ice bucket where it's just like...
Yes.
It's like, all right, you're gonna lose a little bit here. You're gonna be in a couple of situations you're probably not gonna like, and you're gonna have to get it together pretty quickly because yikes for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Lions.
Yeah.
Cowboys. Cowboys. I don't know how their threat levels are anymore. But
right.
Chiefs, Ravens for that rematch.
In a season where there's not a lot of obvious like number one contenders. They still have a shot. It's just their avenues to victory are smaller.
Yes.
There's only so many. Like their main path to winning is they have a top 10 quarterback. And when you have a top 10 quarterback, that kind of just gives you a lot of grace and a lot of room to breathe.
Yes.
But again, it's like the Bills the last couple of years with Josh, where it's like, all right, but like, you know, you can't trust all the other parts, and that's where the problems come in. But yeah, and for the Colts, this might have just ended their season, if not the next 5 years. Look, the numbers, it's another argument of box score versus actual performance. But yeah, by both standards, Richardson was pretty bad. He was 10 of 32 for 175 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And it's the 10 of 32 that does it, in my opinion. Right. I almost feel like he could have gotten away with that part. I really do think. Also, Kevin, you fucking liar. The Fortnite's not down.
I never started it. I just never confirmed it.
Why would you? You don't even play. Why would you make a lie like that?
All right. So here, all right.
Anarchist.
Let's get into some real life shenanigans. Joe was the one that said he thinks Fortnite is down after he announced that posted a pic of Soulja Boy coming to Fortnite tomorrow. So I said they had to shut it down for Soulja Boy. They knew people would flock to it, so they had to, when Callum asked, so it's actually shut down, I said, yeah, they have to boost the server's capacity for Soulja Boy. Source, me.
Goddamn jabroni. But anyway, so he probably, again, he's had a couple rough games. He probably could have gotten away with the low completion percentage. But it was him tapping out after like 3 pretty high-intensity plays where he basically had to be a running back that resulted this week them announcing that he is going to be benched in favor of Joe Flacco. And
the wizard strikes again. Flacco the White.
Here's what I'll say. No, not the optics of that in this particular case are really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am glad that the fans are as outraged about this. Like fans who have had to suffer through and put on a brave face for Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, 2 other guys who I'm probably forgetting right now.
Yeah.
Like truly, just the who's who of like veteran journeymen.
Yeah.
They finally get a quarterback who they're going to develop, only to not develop him.
Yeah.
And
it
is the epitome
like
of
he has not made progress, and I can kind of understand like last year because he got injured pretty early on and was out, but I feel like it's still a rookie debut Anthony Richardson.
Right. It was going to take a few years for him to develop, and then he lost a year basically.
Yeah.
Because he was hurt. And again, he just feels like a guy who needs to play the game of football to get better. He needs to actually see how to do all of this stuff in a professional, like, high-speed environment. Like, there's a finite ability I think he can learn from, and we've talked about this. At the end of the day, as cruel, as, like, ridiculous as it is to throw a lot of these quarterbacks to the wolves, a lot of times it's like, well, you're not going to get better just watching tape. You know, you have to play at least some level of high competitive football. And for me, it's more just the process of it all, because the coaches seem kind of bewildered by the decision. The players didn't seem to be told. Richardson himself is like, yeah, I don't know why. He didn't explain why I was being benched. It really gives that undertone of Jim Irsay, who famously, after they blew that game to the Jags when Carson Wentz was their quarterback, and like stormed into Frank Wright's office and was like, that man is never wearing a Colts jersey ever again. It really feels like he did the same thing here, because the way they're talking about it makes it sound like this is a more permanent decision than a like, hey man, let's just take a couple games, let's regroup here. Again, in terms of like, there's a reason why I wanted him to go to the Lions or the Seahawks in that draft, because I'm like, please let this kid get to a competent franchise that has a proven track record of success. Like, everyone would be so much better off if that happened. But instead, we get this, where they've just kind of thrown the entire plan into disarray and probably screwed up his confidence permanently. And here's the thing, if it really is just punishing him for tapping out on a play, like, I hate to say scoreboard, again, this is a big scary sport where people are like putting their lives on the line every game. But I'm sorry, Colts players. Who the fuck do you all think you are to like demand deference like this? I'm sorry. How many of you have like I'm pretty sure out of like the core Colts players, you've gone to the playoffs once in 2020 in that weird COVID season where we arbitrarily added a seventh seed and Philip Rivers is trying his best against the Buffalo Bills. Like, again, what have any of you accomplished? Michael Pittman, iconic for being like the 30th best number one receiver. Jonathan Taylor, a single rushing title and then not much since. Again, you are not good enough to be like, oh, this guy doesn't have a grinder mindset. Do fucking any of you have a grinder mindset? Worst teams with worse quarterbacks have gotten to the playoffs. Blake fucking Bortles made an AFC title game, and you guys made the playoffs once. Blake fucking Bortles. Trent Dilfer won a goddamn Super Bowl, and you're telling me you can't even make the playoffs? And you're acting like this? You're acting like, he's not sticking his neck out for the team. He's not a team player. None of you are team players. You're not a good team. By nature, you're not team players. Like I'm a process guy. I'm a merit guy, and I'm like know your status kind of person. And like the audacity for all of these veteran players to be like, it's just it's unprofessional. It's unprofessional to tap out, especially when so much of the discourse is like, hey, the culture around football is kind of fucked up, and it's wild that Tua feels like he has to keep playing despite his head being made out of. Being held together with chicken wire and the hopes and dreams of America, I guess. Like Moali Cox, the embodiment of like, I guess I need a tight end in fantasy. You're gonna get like, what? Who the fuck are any of you? Okay, that's enough of that. I just think this whole thing is very silly.
It is silly. I love the fucking.
Joe Flacco won a fucking Super Bowl.
Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl in a cave.
Right.
No,
and you're telling me you can't figure. Well, all right, yeah, that's fine. And that's not the best example because he's on this team.
Yeah.
But I'm like, the team isn't even that much better with him. I don't know. Again, I'm just glad the fans are being sober. I appreciate when fans come at something with more nuance and sophistication and are correctly like, yeah, you know what? You probably shouldn't tap out, Like, it's a bad look to tap out of a game, but, like, after throwing a 300-pound man off your body and running for your life, that's probably a sensible thing to do. And I appreciate them being like, yeah, this is ridiculous. This franchise is always going to be this way. Yeah, respect fans. Because I was there, man. I was there when the Bills were terrible. So, honestly, respect.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we move on to notes?
We shall. All right.
Mitchell Trubisky went to the playoffs multiple times.
Yeah. That's not a note. That just happened.
Mason Rudolph went to the playoffs.
All
like,
right.
I just hate teams who are like, oh, we're just a good quarterback away. It's like, no, then you're not a good team because plenty of shit quarterbacks get to play in the playoffs.
Brock Purdy went to the Super Bowl.
In a cave with 5 All-Pros.
Yeah, sure, he had a lot of stuff going on, but, All right, anyway.
Yeah, it's Iron Man being like, so to escape these terrorists, I made an Iron Man suit out of some twigs, scrap metal, and an already made Iron Man suit.
Yeah. But, for notable notes, they bumped the Philadelphia versus Jacksonville game. Excuse me.
That was supposed to be a Sunday night game?
It was going to be Sunday Night Football. At the original beginning of the season, it was Sunday Night Football. And they bumped it down to a 4 o'clock game. And I respect the hell out of that choice.
Yes. Thank God we're in the period where they're going to start flexing night games. Because we can really rectify some terrible decisions in hindsight.
Eagles haven't been super hot this season. Jacksonville, 2-6. Definitely not super hot this season. The Eagles might be the ones to cause Doug Peterson to get fired, which would be hilarious.
Yes. I have some thoughts on this, and I'm saving them for Don't Sleep on Game. Yes. Yeah. I feel bad for it, but he did win a Super Bowl, so he's fine. Nick Foles won a fucking Super Bowl.
Yes. Honestly, if we're talking about weird combinations that won a Super Bowl, Nick Foles and Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl.
Again, I'm saving my note for slightly later, but yes, that is... I have some thoughts about that.
Here is my problem with the situation, and it is a very classic Kevin problem. Scheduling.
Hit me.
You have you rightfully so bounced out the Eagles and Jaguars. Makes sense. I respect that decision for the sacredness of Sunday Night Football. But you replaced it with the Colts versus the Vikings. What the fuck is that shit?
I
Like,
I think
Vikings
they
have
just
had
want to
a very
publicly shame
dominant.
the Colts.
Yeah, there was the public shaming of the Colts. The Colts aren't the same caliber as they once were with Peyton Manning. The Vikings had a very hot start, and they're kind of mellowing out a little bit, but they had a hot start. So it's like, all right, I believe this is like an A tier team and a C tier team. And putting that at the Sunday Night Football slot to flex there when you have the fucking Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers in that same time slot that you can bump up. Absurd.
Okay, I think I have an explanation for this. So,
Is it their
as a part
agents?
of like,
Are they a bunch of
well,
dummies?
yes, but
Get real,
Jesus.
just
But-
get real childishly mean.
yeah, just
Yeah.
no, because they're. But no, my understanding is that as a part of like every network's contractual agreements, they basically every network is allowed to basically lock a couple games in, or basically they're not allowed to flex those games. They're not allowed to take those games away. So, like for example, one of the reasons why Bills Chiefs never gets like flexed or moved into primetime is because CBS is really good at being like, no, this is one of ours. We call this. Like, we're pulling rank on this because, they get first pulled because it's two AFC teams. So that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been in a primetime slot for a while. So I have to imagine that Green Bay, Detroit, Fox was like, nope, this is ours. You're not allowed to touch it.
Was like kind of like block it, but it's just like it's one of those things where it's like it's the NFL. It is arguably the second most powerful organization after Disney World. Where if they just went, no, we're gonna flex this game, you guys get the Eagles Jaguars game. Fox is just gonna Fox theoretically could just sit there and be like, all right, you got me. But there's also Rams Seahawks. Another 4:00 game. Sure, the whole Fox argument again, with them being NFC teams. But it's just like, you have these two games that you can easily replace it with. And make it like a real, like, hot Sunday Night Football. And what do? Colts versus the Vikings. Both of these are huge, like, Rams Seahawks. We talked about how competitive that division is. That could be putting the Rams on a whole nother level, or it could be putting the Seahawks on a whole nother level. Lions and Packers theoretically are fighting for the number 1 seed. Lions 6-1, Packers 6-2. One of these teams is going away with a 7. That's putting them in the leader spot. And it's at 4:00.
Yeah, I just, it really is weird. Is this really the only game that wasn't like locked?
Yeah,
Boy, vey.
like,
I mean, it'll be funny. It'll be a funny game.
I think it's just the huge waste of potential on that. And it's like, all right, like let's say you're not super committed to that. You can kind of throw in a Dolphins Bills. At least you got or like Commanders Giants. You got the divisional stuff there. But if you want it just to if you want to put like in a trash fire, Patriots Titans. Put in that dumpster
they
fire.
can't.
That's
That's a Thursday night game if I've ever heard one.
That is a mean Sunday Night Football game to make people watch, but I feel like that is the right amount of just flaming pile of poop.
That is you're testing our love of the sport.
Yeah.
That is you're gonna beg for this in a couple months.
Yeah, but no, Vikings Colts.
I'm glad one of us is really like on the scheduling stuff.
Ayo. There is nothing more satisfying to me than a very well made schedule. And I'm not talking about like having every single day of the week planned out because I fly by the seat of my pants every single day of the week. It's like
Mm.
when, like with, especially with like pro wrestling and like this, it's like you are putting together and a day of entertainment. Let's say that
Mm.
you want people to come in happy, like feeling good, and you want them to leave feeling emotional. They don't always have to go home happy, but that you want them feeling passionate about it. And Vikings Colts is not that passion.
Amen.
The Vikings, like, their loss last week was to a completely revamped Rams, and once again the bullshit call. And then their other loss is to the scarily strong Detroit Lions. That's their two losses. One could be argued, and the other is the Lions, which was a 31-29 loss. That was not a blowout in any sense of the word.
Wait a minute, if I remember correctly, was it Colts Minnesota that game? Oh my god, yeah! It was like a year or two ago. It was Jeff Saturday inexplicably became the head coach, and they gave up like the 40-point lead.
Yes.
Oh my god, I
Yes,
completely forgot about. Okay. If you have a tiniest inkling as if that could happen again, that's definitely going to be like the commentator's preamble. They're going to bring that up a lot to fill dead air.
That is probably going to be, like you said, the air-filling conversation.
Right. It's like them bringing up Josh Allen's pistachio farm that he has for some reason.
Yeah, or what's his face on the Chiefs with his pet crocodile. Or
Yeah.
alligator.
Like, it's just like, God, this game is just going on forever. What do we got in the docket?
Yeah.
But,
they're going to show highlights and clips from that shit, but that's about it. There's so many other options. And honestly, another possible like weird, but we can make this work for a Sunday Night Football game. Bears Cardinals. Just saying.
Yes, which is funny because the Cardinals were originally the Bears, or they were the original Chicago team.
Yeah.
So you could do that dumb fun history thing there. But anyway,
there's so many better options.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Texans Jets as a Thursday Night Football game, that checks out as a Thursday Night Football game.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. Could you not have justified keeping Philadelphia? If these were the two choices, wouldn't Philly and Jacksonville at least make more sense? Because at least it has a bunch of bigger names.
Yep, and
I know the Jags suck. I know they do, but
it's also a Kelly Green game,
right?
But
and if nothing else, it's like with how inconsistent the Eagles are, it's like, oh, this is saving the Jaguar season.
Yeah, no, it's actually giving them like a shot to look good, but maybe it's also giving them a shot to watch Doug Peterson get fired.
Well, yeah.
And then, Bucks and Chiefs being the Monday night game. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, it's a former Super Bowls are always a good option for that.
All right. Carter had to listen to Tom Brady. Why?
Yeah, so I ended up, after the first round of Red Zone, I decided to just watch the 4 o'clock game because, I was like, I should spend time with my dad. I should watch. And Tom Brady got the commentary for it. And, okay, I get why people are critical of him now. You really do feel that he's not allowed. He tried to criticize the refs once and, froze. You just, in general, there's, a stiffness and, again, you can tell, he's not allowed to talk because for people who don't know, he's also a co-owner of the Raiders now. And as a part of that, because he's a part of a competitive team nominally competitive team in this league, he's not allowed to do certain things as a commentator. He can't criticize the refs without getting fined. He can't go to practices. He can't really talk to the players too much. So there's a finite amount that he can talk about. He's not the best at talking about individual plays and breaking them down. It is fascinating because truly, the only time he really pops as a commentator is when he gets a layup from his co-host about like, well, as a former player, and it's
Yeah.
like, I get the seed of the idea there of like, this is one of the most winning football players we've ever seen in the sport. Having him talk about his approach to different things is at least something. But it's just, it doesn't come up in natural conversation of these games enough to really justify that. He also talked about Josh Allen's ass a lot. Like a lot.
Yeah,
That's neither here nor there.
that's just weird.
He had one interesting point where he like talked about how the Bills and Seahawks are two different teams kind of in change. Where the Bills are changing personnel but keeping sort of culture, and the Seahawks have changed their culture while keeping the same players. And how those two different things are happening is very, very interesting. Because the Bills feel like they have a spark of new life, because it's like, oh, well, we have some new young guys, we got some new veterans, we got, like, it's the fresh energy. The scars of the last couple playoff losses aren't here. And, like, they're kind of vibing out. Whereas the Seahawks have a lot of the same players, and they just feel very tense because it's like, well, we have to win, even if we have a new coach. Like, the culture hasn't been built yet. There was an inexplicable moment where, like, someone got a roughing the passer call on Josh Allen, and another D lineman just started fighting him on the sideline. I'm like, why are you guys getting so tilted? But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Question of the week. Oh, this is one from you. This is a really good one.
Thank you. We're gonna keep this simple because of the amount of time this has been. Just name a team which you think has really hit their groove, and a team which has no groove at all. Like, for example, mine is the New Orleans Saints has no groove whatsoever right now. And
Textbook example.
yeah, they're falling apart. We talked about it. And I think a team that's actually kind of hit in their groove secretly, Denver Broncos.
I was thinking about that one.
I think their losses are looking competitive, and their wins are looking competent. So I think they're really. I'm not saying they're gonna win every single game here on out. I'm not saying they're gonna like be in the winners of the division, but I think they're gonna look good.
All right. So mine are. So this is going to be a weird one for hitting their groove. I was going to say the Chargers, but I already talked about the Chargers today. So I'm going to go with. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are quietly hitting their groove. Now I know this could be a jinx, and I apologize in advance.
They're not.
Okay, hear me out. The defense looks a lot better. Like, that Bengals game should have been competitive, and it wasn't. And I feel like a part of that is because the defense just looks a lot more competent. I think, like, you know, we joke a lot about them just drafting names of, like, just get the biggest name, you know? Like, oh, get all the Georgia players, get who's ever an interesting story in the draft.
Yep.
And yet it's actually kind of working out. Carter and Sweat have looked much better the last few weeks. You're at least getting not a lot out of Huff, but at least something out of Huff. And Cooper DeJean, who is basically Operation Warp Speed for white athleticism, looked really fucking good in that game. And I'm just like, this is what you need. Like, you kind of, inexplicably, you really did kind of need him to be an immediate impact player. And he kind of has been.
Mm-hmm. No, he's a great acquisition, and he's fun. He's someone that's fun to watch, especially with him being a punt returner. Also, too.
Yes.
Hilarious.
But yes, and also, like, I feel like both parts of the team are finally buying into the scheme more. Like, the offense, I think they finally found a decent enough balance between run and pass, and especially because Hurts just looks so much healthier right now. He looks faster.
He's looking good. I think they're week 5 bye, and I've seen things like Reddit posts and stuff. There was not a confrontation, but like a conversation during the bye week, or like right after, something like that, where it's just like, hey, like it was like players and coaches both agreed they needed to like talk shit out and figure things out, and I think it's going passable.
And yeah, like, again, especially like when you look at the distribution of touches between all the big players, again, they are a stars and scrubs team, and they're finally leaning into that, where it's like, no, the only people who are getting more than 5 touches on this offense are Brown, Smith, and Barkley. That's it. We're keeping it simple. And when Zach Ertz, or not Zach Ertz, oh my God, Dallas Goddard?
Yep.
Is that it? I always forget his name.
Yeah, it's
He was
Dallas.
that's embarrassing. But yeah, last week, turns out I was sick, guys. So if you're wondering why I was so loopy on names, that's a part of it. And a team with no rhythm. Yeah, I was rough. And a team with no rhythm whatsoever. I'm trying to think of a funner option. I'm gonna go with. Well, it's kind of a boring answer, but the Bengals, because it is insane that the 3 games they've had to play without T. Higgins are all losses. Like, they are stars and scrubs derogatory because they haven't had their stars and their scrubs are really scrubby. Yes. Like, it is insane how much the defense has fallen off, where, like, genuinely non-competitive at times. The vision of this team needed the defense to at least be like 18, 20-ish range. They're 30, 32-ish range. And you're not, like, at some point, it's just impossible to score enough points to make up for that.
Yeah.
Especially when the offense is just so hot and cold. Again, if you don't have T. Higgins, the whole thing slows down. And yeah, there just is no sense of rhythm and no sense of vibe whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and losing Mixon for their running back game, kind of detrimental.
Inexplicably a load-bearing pillar, it turns out. Which is weird because the fans did not like him. And not even for the crimes he committed.
Yeah, they just didn't like him. All right.
Yeah.
Shall we dive into next week?
Yes.
Big game.
Next week.
Yeah, big game
Easy.
of the week. Detroit, Green Bay. We
don't even need to discuss this one.
Yeah,
Simple.
We've said L that we should.
Yes. There's a couple big matchups this week, but that's the one that
that's
just
the big
stands
one.
above the rest.
Yeah. The bye week for week 9, Pittsburgh and San Fran. I feel like this is a good point for both of them for opposite reasons.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, Pitt's having a good start.
Yeah.
Middle of the season bye, always a good time. And it's like, all right, let's rest up. Let's hone in for this ass half of the season. And you're going to probably hear me say that a dozen more times with this point for teams that are looking good going into their buys. And San Fran, kind of a hot mess. A little bit of a dumpster fire. People are getting hurt. People are getting injured. That's it, like where for Pittsburgh, it was kind of like a more positive, like, hey, you go home, rest up. We'll talk about things next week. It's San Fran's go home, rest. We're going to figure this out. Derogatory.
Yes. Exactly. Complimentary, derogatory. Perfectly stated. Yes. And that leads us to our don't sleep on games. You want to hit yours first? I was going to do this one, but you beat me to it.
We can pick the same game, Carter. It's possible.
Yeah, but I'd like to talk about 2.
Um,
It's more fun that way.
So I went with Los Angeles Rams versus Seattle Seahawks. We talked about the division so many times tonight. And it's one of those, how alive are the Rams versus, like we've previously called them, the bottom of the good teams pace, like Pacers test or bar setter, where it's just like, all right, you win against the Seahawks, you can be considered a good team, or like you can at least compete with relatively good teams. You lose against them, you're a bad team. And I think that's going to be a fun test for the Rams because I'm still kind of out on them. But with the competitiveness of the NFC West, it'll be fun.
Yes. Yeah, and those games are always hyper competitive. The NFC West, like, it doesn't get as much gas as the AFC North in terms of just being knuckle fights, but yeah, this one will be like a mud brawl that basically could just decide the fate of both of these teams this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like say if the Rams win, that puts the Rams and the Seahawks at the bottom end of the thing. But if the Seahawks win, it's like, all right, that's an instant shot to the top. of the division, pending on what the Cardinals do. So it's going to be fun. Who do the Cardinals play?
Excellent choice.
Oh yeah, they play the Dolphins. No, that was last week. Sorry, I'm just trying to find out. They do play the Bears. All right, I was just trying to figure out how the Dolphins play. And for some reason, you chose the Eagles in Jacksonville.
Yes, mostly because this could be Doug Peterson's last stand, which is insane when you remember
He won
that
Super
the
Bowl
one
team.
he won a Super Bowl, and he has a statue
He does
with
have
the
a statue.
backup court. It's the one statue that's in that area,
It is the
and it is
silliest
two
statue.
guys talking, commissioned by Bud Light
Yes.
to reference the Philly thing. It
Yes.
is so stupid
It is-
that exists. It is so emblematic of our weird culture that's upset. Like, we're in a statue making boom for no reason. No one can decipher why, other than
got too much bronze.
it gets you press. Yeah. Jesus Christ, we found this giant hole of bronze, and if we don't use it all, the planet's going to sink and fall out of orbit. We have to move, people. And I just think that's very funny. And that at least gives me... And, like, here's the thing. I do think this game could be fireworks, because Jacksonville's pass defense is inexplicably horrific. They did the thing you're supposed to do. They got 2 elite pass rushers with Josh Other Allen, which is Josh Allen with button eyes on his face like Coraline. And he never throws turnovers. Well, no, shit, that doesn't work for this year.
No.
He never tries to hurdle over anyone. He plays it safe. And Trayvon Walker, who, unfortunately, because Aiden Hutchinson had been so good this year, everyone quietly ignored that Trayvon Walker has also been good. And you kind of understand why they went with it in terms of, like, physical upside. But, yeah, so the Eagles could have this could be a 40-point bonanza if my argument that they're finding their groove comes true.
Yeah, I think it could be just a high stakes, high entertainment game. But also it could be literally the nail in the coffin for
Dougie Boy.
yeah, Doug, and probably the rest of the staff, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like,
But,
you'll probably have somebody interim, but nobody's going to keep their jobs going into the next season. And I feel that way just about the Jaguars in general. It's just a matter of when.
Yes. It just feels inevitable. Wouldn't it be funny if they kept everyone after this year, though?
That would be
It would be kind of funny.
That would be the shock of the century.
Yes. But it'd be really fun.
No, it would be entertaining as fuck, but it's one of those. If that happens, it's like, what the heck are they doing? Are they? Alrighty.
Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all had a lovely Halloween season. As we slowly make our way to Thanksgiving and we get to the back half of the season, we look forward in a couple weeks to talk to you about our mid-season thoughts and feelings about this season. But until then, I'm Carter.
And I'm not.
Oh, that's good. It'd be boring if we were both Carter. That's basically Disney Desk, but Sydney comes up with more. Well, no, that's not true. Sydney thinks stuff. Anyway, have a lovely weekend, everyone. Enjoy some goddamn football.